We appreciate you for listening to our space. If you want early access to rewards for our new game Surge, visit surge.metafide.io to claim your spot on the waitlist today. That's surge.metafide.io. We're excited to see you there.
Good morning, Vietnam, and everywhere else out there. This is Frank Spicer, your co-host, CEO of Metafide. With us, you have Matt Cross and Big Worm Searchatora, as long as our resident trusty mod keyboard Yeti. I see a couple folks out there in the audience that you know, multi-time frequent listeners. So great to see everybody, and for everybody that's listening to this later. Today we have a pretty interesting subject about alpha, where to find it, how to use it, why it's important, and basically how to think about it, how it benefits you. So, what are you up to today, Matt? How you feeling?
Yeah, doing good today. Another good day in the Fide house. Development is always underway. Things are looking great. Just been sharing it with a few of my friends and just getting the best reactions. Everybody's saying, get this out there immediately.
Yeah, yeah, that's not bad. It's one of those things where some people like you take it to somebody and you're like, I don't get it. What's going on? But we have the opposite problem where people are like telling us now to just get it out there in the market. So I think we might be doing just that. More to come. We'll let everybody know. But there's a little hint, some alpha there anyway. What about you, Worm? How you doing today?
Yeah, I'm doing good. I guess I'm with Matt in the fight house. Although if you hear some noise in the background, I got getting my gutters clean today. So living the dream here in the United States.
Okay.
Yeah, feeling the excitement too. Great to be part of this team that's building something that everyone's banging on the door excited about. So I share Matt's sentiment and excited with the rest of you to get this product out.
Yeah, yeah. And then we got Yeti. How's it going, Yeti? What's it like in the land down under?
It's a sunny, beautiful day you've got ahead of you. Just a bit of alpha on the weather. It's perfect 28 degrees, although it's now almost midnight. So, but
Yeah,
yeah, doing good, doing
I
great.
don't, I don't natively speak kilometers, so I'm not really sure what that translates into in real temperature. But
Oh,
yeah,
I
like
can't believe you
I'm sure
guys.
it's hot. I'm sure it's hot. Yeah,
Oh, I
but
can't
yeah,
believe you kept the imperial system even after the empire gave it up, realized that it was no good.
what man? Like 12 inches to a foot, 3 feet to a yard. I mean, what? I don't even understand. Like, I don't understand how you give that up. Like, you just have to remember a bunch of random ways to translate things and things that don't matter. Like, it's perfect. Like, it's why do things in base 10 when you can add
Oh,
some
you took the
flavor
words out
to
of
it?
my mouth. Like, why you got to complicate things with base 10? I mean, so
Yeah, I
complicated.
know. I know. Like, it's where's the fun in that? But um yeah, so today we're going to discuss alpha, like, and by alpha, what we mean is an early signal that allows you to act on a system or a market that gives you an edge that isn't present in the market yet. So, uh, investors always look for alpha, things that are, signals which precipitate with a high degree of confidence things that will happen in the market specifically. There's all different kinds of alpha, but the kind that we're really referring to is what can you get to get an edge in the market, right? And just before we go through that, you know, some examples of like alpha were I don't know if anybody's seen the movie Wall Street. So, did you see the movie Wall Street?
I sure have.
That's right, Worm. And so Bud, who's played by Charlie Sheen, is a stockbroker, a trader that's looking for a way to make money for his boss, Gordon Gecko, who's this cartoonish, villainous, greedy capitalist, you know, guy with no scruples, and he's trying to find a way to get an edge on on the market for him. And they're kind of they're kind of playing in the not minor leagues, but they're sort of on the edge of the big time. And what Bud figures out to do is he wants to understand which way companies are moving. So instead of trying to like figure it out and work for it and do all these other things, Bud has a pretty crafty but illegal idea. And he goes out and he buys a waste company that goes in and removes all the waste from all the Wall Street companies. And then he uses that to go through the trash of all the places to find things that aren't yet present, like people about to execute trades. And essentially, in the crypto sense, front runs those trades so that he can sort of get in front of the movements that are coming so he can buy and get out of companies that are about to be, move on the way up. And in effect, it's a pretty clever way of getting alpha, although something that could wind you up, in a jumpsuit in a prison somewhere if you try to pull that off now. And he does get in trouble for it, sort of in the movie. But I don't want to spoil it for you. By the way, if you haven't seen the movie, it's 40 years old, so it's kind of on you if that's a spoiler. But it's definitely worth watching because it kind of holds up. Another way that I've gotten alpha before is back when I worked for a company called Heavy. It was the first CTO gig I got in New York, and Heavy was a sort of a men's content site. And at the time, we were moving it from sort of an advertising agency project to building it into a real site. And while that was going on, I was in the middle of Manhattan. We were located in Hell's Kitchen, so 39th Street there in New York. So I was right in the middle of kind of where all the sales offices were in the city. And what I decided to do was I went and I figured, and keeping this 2006, so LinkedIn wasn't even that big yet. There was still the concept of a business card was still very much prevalent. People gave out business cards, and I figured since I was around where all the salespeople were, I would go around to all of the printing shops that would print business cards in the several mile radius from where we were. And I went in and I gave all of the clerks there $100. And I said, listen, anytime you get an order to print a large amount of sales business cards, give me a call and I'll come down and I'll give you another $100. So I just wanted just show me the receipt that they got printed and I'll be here and I'll give you $100. And for a while that kind of worked because what I was doing was looking for companies that were about to grow. So anytime they printed a giant bunch of sales cards, that means they're going to make a big sales push, which is going to mean revenue is going to show up. And then in the next quarter, you start to see all that revenue start to get reported. And it actually worked for about, a couple of years. Like that concept worked because you'd see companies gearing up, like clockwork, 90 to 120 days later, you'd start to see them start to put up numbers that those numbers would translate to revenue for the company. And, if you printed up 30 or more different people's sales cards, I had a pretty reliable signal to know okay, that company is about to start really pushing into making money. And so that's one example of how I've actually gotten alpha in real life in a non-traditional way and made a pretty good amount of money that way. But yeah, so what we're doing here in Web3 is we're looking for things that aren't yet present in the market or even just Web2. So how do we figure out that nowadays, right? That's the question. I'm going to stop there for a second, but you following so far, Matt? Where you at with this?
Oh yeah, I'm following along. I love the crafty abilities you've always had to find alpha in the markets. And you apply it to Metafide today in ways that, I couldn't even picture at the time.
Yeah, man. Thanks, dude. So it is fun. It's fun to think like this because you're combining street smarts and book smarts, when you're actually trying to figure out alpha. And what you want to do is you want to find ways to acquire a signal that aren't in trades yet. So by the time someone puts up a bid or an ask on an exchange, they're committed to buying at that price or selling at that price. But what we want to do is we want to see sort of generally what people think the market's going to do and make it so that they're competing for things with value, the i.e. FIDE token, right? And you're trying to compete for something that you know has value, that you know has a deflationary aspect to it. So you have a reasonable chance that it's actually going to increase in value. So you're trying to compete as hard as you can to get these tokens. And if you can, well, then you realize like, okay, like it's worth trying extra hard to try to get that, to get that in the door. And therefore you're trying to predict which way things are going to move without, you know, without essentially, putting up a trade so that you're not committing to buy the actual asset. So it doesn't show up on DEXs or other exchanges because it's not yet a trade that's being placed yet. All right, sorry about that. My internet's a little spotty. But yeah, so when you look at what the Metafide project is doing, it's all about this alpha, right? And how can we accrue a signal? And that's what makes this project really different because you have people competing with signals that aren't yet committed to trades yet. And when you source out thousands of these people that are some of them very good at playing the game, you get a distilled down signal from the best performers that predates what's about to happen in the market. And then that's the thing that we can use to go in and arbitrage the market. So we combine that with AI models, the signal we get from the game, and then actually be able to execute trades in the market. And of course, we're about to announce plans in ways to share even that back with holders of the FIDE token if they choose to, to pull in with us. We'll be announcing that in the next maybe 2 weeks or so. So that I think is an early signal on how you're going to be able to do that. But when you're looking at what you can do to get alpha, there's a bunch of different things. Like you can just look at generally which way you think the market's going to move and look at volume. You could look at things like, the conversation around X. You could try to figure out what that means. It's a little latent. It doesn't move as fast and as reliably as maybe some of the other mathematical signals you could get. But I'm also in the camp that thinks technical analysis in Web3 is part math, but part astrology. Like I think you can't rely on the charts moving the way that they look in the near term as reliably as maybe people think you can. So I think there's a little bit of art to it, or chance or whatever you want to call it. If you're just sort of relying on the tea leaves of the technical analysis, I think in order to succeed in this game, you have to combine it with other signals and then check and source only the best trades that you can make, right? So it's not like you take every one of them that looks like it's mathematically going to check out, because those are the ones that wind up surprising you with the biggest heartbreak.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think, like you said, sometimes you can't predict everything that's going on in the stars, and in this industry specifically, news spreads like wildfire. And if you get a bad piece of information that goes around the market, you can see downside risk break out in under 5 minutes. And there's not a single person who could predict that. You start to see people move and ditch assets because people aren't really attached to these assets long term. So you have a market that doesn't react like any other markets. It's super reactionary, actually. And it's how do you predict that is you constantly have to be monitoring that throughout the space.
Yeah. So where should people look to monitor it throughout the space? That's part of the question. Like how can they start to figure that out?
Well, like you said, a lot of people look at Twitter, they look at Reddit, and what you found through your previous experience with AI, just to let everyone know too, Frank was the first person to ever get access to the Twitter fire hose.
That's
Now
true.
only 3 companies in the entire world have access to that today, and it's worth a couple $1 million. So with Frank's, early work with sentiment analysis, he always explains it like raising a bad child. You raise your kid in your house, he has a localized language, localized behaviors, and then you send him off to school and he learns a few bad words or bad behaviors, and then you constantly have to remove the noise. And you would think, okay, after that first year of school, it's done. But as he continues to grow through middle school, high school, even to college, you're constantly removing that noise and making tweaks to the system and trying to bring it back to, a certain baseline that's relative to you. And so a lot of the sentiment analysis, right, doesn't work. So you have to figure out crafty ways to capture a human signal. And one of the ways to do that is you need to provide something of value to people, because they're not going to give up their signal unless there's something worth earning on the other side of that. So that's one of the things we're able to do, is create a crafty way to create value in a system and get people to have a lot of fun, but also a way to, utilize their signal to earn some money. And then so forth, we could utilize that signal for our community and, trade off of it or give them a better outcome.
And one thing that we've all kind of noticed, right? When you see certain players that learn to play, the games, especially spot, especially people that learn, started to really get good strategies around spot and testing. When you watch them, like, certain people are pretty good at getting familiar with the very near-term movement of, for instance, the asset BTC that is in the first game release, right? Like, you start to get a good intuition for, like, oh, when it does this, this happens quite a bit. And then people are pretty good at picking up on those trends and the tendencies that aren't necessarily present, like, in any chart or market. So I've picked up some alpha just following along, like watching people get into these patterns and these trades and being like, okay, like, these cluster of dots is here, and that's going to probably mean it's going to do X or Y or Z. You start to recognize certain types of patterns. At least that's on my side. Is that something that you've seen too, Matt?
Yeah, I've definitely seen that. You sometimes see the line start off the beginning, you see it take a quick break all the way down and start shooting down, and you kind of get a sense to where you see it bounce back. And you're like, okay, I know if it goes this far down, it's going to bounce back and come, relatively up to here. And then depending on the volume of the day, you can kind of judge, how long are these quick downfalls or these quick upswings, and, where should I be placing my next point in relativity to where, people got in early and where did they place their point.
I've also noticed there's certain types of game conditions where you'll see a bunch of early dots, and then people will hold multiple shots for later in the game based on, like, that early volatility. So if it's really volatile in the beginning, people seem like they'll hold 2 or 3 dots for later in the game because they're like, okay, it could bounce around, could bounce back. Whereas when it's flat, there's almost like a competition to see how many people can get their dots down early, right? Like, and people seem like they're pretty good at looking at previous candles and then the existing open candle to figure out, like, okay, it's not going to bounce around a whole lot, so I'm going to get rewarded just for how early I am versus saving a few hedges against it bouncing or dropping, right? So that's another thing. And using the other players' dots, even sort of as a latent indicator, is a pretty good signal that you can use in the market to actually execute trades. And I think now is a pretty good point to wedge in here. We're actually working on a product where you'll be able to partake in the actual execution of the trades based on the signal we get out of the game, just by loading or staking FIDE tokens into these trading things. And so it's another way that we're going to, and it's not going to be for everybody. Like, you'll still get the benefit of holding FIDE, but for people that can win enough and qualify into these products, you'll be able to just lock into them and it'll execute the trade and return the rewards to you along with us sort of as a partner. So I think this part of the development is important. It's another way for us to get our community paid for the alpha that it's generating, not just for the awesome levered payouts and not just for the deflationary uptick of the FIDE token once it's out there, but also just real raw access to executing trades, which I like too, because it's us putting our money where our mouth is and showing people, look, here's the value and here you go. Like, we're executing these trades with the signal that we're getting. It's not just some sort of, theory. We're actually doing it, and then you share it. And of course, I'm extremely biased towards our users, and I want them to win, before everybody else does. So I think that's part of our core philosophy here. So, anything to say about that, Worm?
Yeah, I mean, I'm hearing all this, and just thinking about alpha, and what you said about seeing players' dots in the game gives you sort of a hint as to general sentiment in the market. And so, anybody that's taken stats in school, thinking about sort of sampling populations versus the actual population statistics, the more and more players that get on there, they're going to represent what's happening in the market. Right? It's a statistical representation. So you can definitely use, this interaction with, spot and then range coming up to predict this is what everyone else is going to feel in the market. So A, you can use it to, have a high ROI in the game, but B, you can, use it to increase your own wealth. So yeah. So you can provide alpha, and then you're getting alpha from playing. So.
Definitely worthwhile. Yeah. So yeah, I think just in general, like, good place to look for alpha. Our game, I think, is one great place to look for it. You can fish for it on Twitter. You can fish for it on Reddit. You can hang out in Discord groups. I think you using your own brain power of what you think is probably likely to happen, and sort of working on your own models and then trying those out in the game to see how they pan out. Like, that's a great way to practice to see if you're actually going to be successful with it. It's a good testing ground for those kind of things, and one that we hope will turn into sort of a global playground for people to try out their estimates and projections. Like, I think what that is one of the things that we're building, and therefore rewarding people for doing it with something of real value. So that's one thing. But yeah, so I obviously, let's get you guys into the discord.gg/FIDE-token. Let's get everybody going. Let's get testers in. We're about to expand to a beta list of testers fairly soon. And as we push this thing out to market, bring a bunch of people with us that are good at playing the game, that are adding value, adding signal. And let's get you shared in the alpha that's being created. So one thing though, before we kick it over to our trusty mod Yeti, is I just wanted to ask this question. I know it's kind of out of left field, but I see Peter here on our group, and I just want to know: are you the guy on YouTube with all the guitar videos? Give me a thumbs up or something if that's you. Like, because I thought maybe one of our users here is out there. And I was looking at somebody with the same name, and I was like, I follow this guy on YouTube, and he's like got a bunch of really awesome guitar videos, and I thought maybe that's this guy, but no response. So maybe it's, oh wait, that is him. Yes. So I'm gonna share the link to the company chat, but this guy's got some awesome videos. You gotta check him out. I realized, like, I'm just like, oh shoot, I've been following this guy for like, maybe a year, like, on YouTube, and I was like, wait, is this the same dude? So I think I'll share it locally, and then maybe we'll, if it's okay with him, we'll actually share it out on the main handle. But yeah, so Yeti, let's kick it over to you, and let's by the way, awesome stuff, man. Yeti, do you want to hit us with some questions here? We got a couple minutes.
Hey, we actually don't have any questions for today, but I just wanted to say, like, so the alpha, the information you get is really only as good as your ability to position early and size in smartly with that information. And use a framework. Once you've got that alpha, it's really important to use a framework to test the theories that you've come up with and track the outcome of that. I mean, like, I'm a part of heaps of Discord groups that share alpha, but I'm sure if I traded against a lot of them, they would actually be negative trades. Because by the time it's gotten to those groups, it's kind of no longer alpha, even though they're called alpha groups. But with a game like Metafide, where you're seeing these real-time positions getting placed, you're able to read that volatility, read the player habits, the timing patterns, all of that. So yeah, really, like, Metafide's games really do kind of encapsulate what alpha is. It's like they yeah.
Yeah, well said, Ben. I think that's kind of the point too, where we're trying to find ways to source predictive elements that to the market through really smart people competing, as hard as they can to get things that fairly compensate them for what they put into it. And I think that kind of thing has a place in the world where instead of it being where you put up a bunch of irresponsible leverage for a less than winning payout where you're taking on so much risk, like that model is flipped. Like we need to make it so the people that add the value, that are doing the work, that are the smart innovative signal into the system, like those people get rewarded. And I think we've sort of cracked the code here, and it actually will work. And it's not one of those things where we're taking from the system, but we're actually returning the value to the people in the system who are actually the smart, responsible, or lucky good actors, and then combining that with a way for more people to win. And I don't think that has been properly reflected in the way products have been developed in the finance space in general, but certainly not in Web3. Like I don't think that's something that's been well represented, and we're looking forward to actually being that representation in the market, at least part of it. So there's plenty more for people to jump in and also be on this trip with us, but I think that's something that we all need to think about, is how do we generate predictive signal and then get it to the people who really the value is generated from. And the more we have your help, the more people we have in the games, the more signal we have, the more opportunities and products we can build for people to share in that upside. So, with that, I'm going to say, thank you all. Thanks for joining us. We're going to be live this Thursday at 4 p.m. Eastern time. And we'll get that notice out there on X. Follow us on our Discord, discord.gg/FIDE-token. Be careful of imitators, so make sure it's the real server. Follow us on X at FIDE_AI. And this is for everybody else out there and listening. We've opened up our pre-registration list so that you can sort of get into these announcements and get early access to stuff. It's at surge.metafide.io. You just go in there, drop your email, and we will connect with you when the spot opens up to come into the game. So make sure you're on there. Also, that'll be matched with early rewards, amplifiers, escalators. So if you're on there, you stand a much greater chance of getting more value earlier. So that's the best kind of alpha I can give you. Surge.metafide.io, and make sure you're registered. So if you're out there, please be on that list because I want you to get the rewards early. Okay. Thank you, everybody. Have a good rest of the week, and I'll see you on Thursday.
We appreciate you for listening to our space. If you want early access to rewards for our new game Surge, visit surge.metafide.io to claim your spot on the waitlist today. That's surge.metafide.io. We're excited to see you there.